He was walking his dog when the golden retriever broke free from his leash and bounded straight toward me, and I was crying so hard on that park bench that I didn't even notice until a wet nose was nudging my hand. It was past midnight in Zilker Park, and Austin was finally quiet except for the distant hum of traffic on Mopac and the gentle lapping of Lady Bird Lake against the shore. I'd been sitting on this same bench for over an hour, letting the tears fall freely in the darkness, when this beautiful dog appeared like some kind of four-legged angel and started trying to comfort me with the pure, uncomplicated love that only animals seem capable of. That's when I heard the footsteps rushing toward us and a man's voice calling out in panic, "Buster! Buster, come back here." Before I continue this, hit that subscribe button. I post one real story every single day. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? I'm always curious who my stories are reaching. I looked up through my tears to see a tall figure jogging toward us, and when he stepped into the circle of light from the park lamp, my breath caught in my throat. He was older than me, probably in his early 40s, with dark hair that was silver at the temples and the kind of strong, weathered face that suggested he spent a lot of time outdoors. He was wearing worn jeans and a faded UT Longhorns t-shirt, and there was something about the way he moved, careful but determined, that made me think he was used to handling crisis situations. "I'm so sorry," he said, reaching for the dog's collar. He's usually better behaved than this, but he has this thing about people who are upset. I swear he's part therapy dog. His voice was warm and deep, with just a hint of a Texas drawl, and when he looked at me directly, I saw concern in his eyes that went beyond just apologizing for his dog's behavior. "It's okay," I managed to say, though my voice came out thick with tears. "He's beautiful." The man paused in his efforts to grab Buster's collar, studying my face in the lamplight. "Are you all right?" he asked gently. "I mean, obviously you're not all right, but are you safe? Do you need me to call someone?" It was such a kind question, asked with such genuine concern, that I felt fresh tears welling up in my eyes. "I'm safe. I gestured helplessly at myself at the mess I must have looked like. Having a moment. Those can be rough. He straightened up, leaving his hand resting on Buster's head but making no move to leave. "I'm Ryan, by the way. And this escape artist is Buster. Chloe. Nice to meet you, Chloe." Ryan was quiet for a moment, then said, "Would it help to talk about it? Sometimes strangers are easier to tell things to than people who know you." I looked at him, this man who had appeared out of nowhere with his intuitive dog and his kind eyes, and found myself nodding. "Mind if I sit?" he asked, gesturing to the other end of the bench. "Please." Ryan settled onto the bench, maintaining a respectful distance, while Buster positioned himself between us like he was monitoring the situation. The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable. It felt more like he was giving me space to decide how much I wanted to share. "I got fired today," I said finally. "Well, technically yesterday, since it's after midnight now. After 3 years at the same marketing firm, they decided my position was redundant. That sucks." "It does. But that's not really why I'm crying." Ryan was quiet, waiting. "I'm crying because when my boss called me into his office and gave me the speech about budget cuts and restructuring, all I felt was relief." The words came tumbling out. Relief that I wouldn't have to go back to that soul-crushing job, that I wouldn't have to pretend to care about increasing engagement metrics for clients I don't believe in. That doesn't sound like something to cry about. It is when you realize you've been sleepwalking through your entire adult life. I wiped my eyes with the back of my hand. I'm 25 years old, and I have no idea what I actually want to do with my life. I just took the first decent-paying job I could find after college and convinced myself I was being responsible and practical. "What did you study in college?" "English literature." "With dreams of being a writer." I laughed, but it came out bitter. My parents were so worried about me choosing an impractical major that I spent 4 years planning how I was going to prove them wrong, how I was going to make it as a novelist or a journalist or something creative and meaningful. What happened? Life happened. Student loans happened. The practical voice in my head that sounded suspiciously like my mother happened. I looked out at the lake, where the city lights were reflecting like scattered stars. So I took a job writing copy for dental practices and insurance companies, telling myself it was just temporary, just until I got on my feet. And 3 years later, I realize I haven't written anything creative in months. I can't even remember the last time I read a book for pleasure instead of scrolling through social media. I turned to look at Ryan, who was listening with the kind of focused attention that made me feel like my words actually mattered. How did I become someone I don't even recognize? Ryan was quiet for a moment, absently stroking Buster's fur. "Can I tell you something?" he said finally. "Sure. I used to be a lawyer. Corporate law, big firm downtown, the whole thing. Made more money than I knew what to do with, worked 80-hour weeks, had a corner office and a secretary and business cards with fancy titles. Used to be. I quit 5 years ago to become a park ranger." I stared at him. Seriously? Seriously. Took a 90% pay cut, moved out of my downtown condo into a little house near the Greenbelt, and now I spend my days teaching kids about native plants and making sure hikers don't get lost on the trails. What made you do it? Ryan's expression grew distant, and I saw something flicker across his face that looked like pain. "My wife left me," he said simply. "After 8 years of marriage, she told me she didn't know who I was anymore. Said I'd become this stranger who lived for billable hours and client dinners and partnership meetings. I'm sorry. The worst part was, she was right. I had become a stranger, even to myself." Ryan looked at me directly. "So I had a choice. I could keep being that stranger, or I could figure out who I actually wanted to be. And you chose to be a park ranger." I chose to be someone who remembered why he loved being outdoors, why he cared about conservation, why he wanted to help people connect with nature instead of just helping corporations avoid lawsuits. We sat in comfortable silence for a moment, and I found myself really looking at Ryan for the first time. There was something peaceful about him, something that suggested he'd found his way to a life that actually fit him. "Do you regret it?" I asked. "Which part?" "Giving up the money, the prestige, the life everyone expects you to want." Ryan smiled, and it was the first genuine smile I'd seen from him all night. "Never. Not for a single day. Even though it cost you your marriage?" His smile faded, and I saw that pain flicker across his face again. The marriage was already over. We just hadn't admitted it yet. He was quiet for a moment. "But honestly, losing Sarah was the hardest thing I've ever been through. Even knowing it was the right choice doesn't make it hurt less." "How long ago?" "The divorce was final 3 years ago. But we'd been growing apart for much longer than that." I felt something tighten in my chest, a recognition of the kind of loss that goes beyond just missing someone. "Is that why you're here tonight?" "In the park, I mean." Ryan's expression grew complicated, and he looked down at his hands. "This is going to sound crazy," he said. "Try me. This bench, this exact bench, is where I proposed to Sarah. 10 years ago, almost to the day." My breath caught. "Ryan, I know. It's pathetic. But I come here sometimes when I'm feeling lost or lonely or like I need to remember something important." He gestured at the view of the lake, the city skyline twinkling in the distance. "I proposed here because it was her favorite spot in Austin. She used to say it was the only place in the city where you could see the sky properly." "What were you trying to remember tonight?" "How to let go." The words hung between us, heavy with meaning. "I've been carrying this guilt for 5 years, Ryan continued. Guilt that I chose my career over my marriage, that I waited too long to change, that I lost the best thing in my life because I was too scared to be authentic. But you did change. You became a park ranger. You chose authenticity. Too late, though. That's what I keep telling myself." He looked at me, and there was something vulnerable in his expression that made my heart ache. "I came here tonight to try to forgive myself. To finally accept that some mistakes can't be undone, and the only thing I can do is try to be better going forward." "What would you do if you were in my place?" Tell me in the comments. I stared at this man who had stumbled into my crisis and somehow made me feel less alone in my confusion, and I realized something that made my pulse quicken. "Ryan," I said quietly, "what if it wasn't too late?" "What do you mean?" "What if the reason you can't let go isn't because you made irreversible mistakes, but because you haven't found what you're supposed to be holding onto instead?" He looked at me with surprise, like I'd said something he hadn't expected. "Chloe, I know this sounds crazy, I know we just met, and I know I'm probably just emotional and confused and projecting my own issues onto your situation. I took a breath. But sitting here with you, talking about authenticity and having the courage to change, it's the first time in years that I've felt like I was having a real conversation with someone. You were having a real conversation. That's exactly what I mean. I turned on the bench to face him fully. You make me feel like it's okay to be lost, like being uncertain about what I want is better than pretending to want something I don't. Ryan was quiet, studying my face in the lamplight. Chloe, you're 25. You have your whole life ahead of you to figure out what you want to do, who you want to be. And you're, what, 42? 43? You have decades ahead of you too. It's different. Why? Because you made some mistakes? Because you got divorced? I shook my head. Ryan, everyone makes mistakes. The difference is that some people learn from them and some people just keep making the same ones over and over. Which category do you think I'm in? I think you're in the category of people who care enough to sit on a bench at midnight trying to figure out how to be better. Buster, who had been quietly observing our conversation, suddenly stood up and placed his head on Ryan's knee, like he was offering comfort. Even your dog thinks you're being too hard on yourself, I said. Ryan laughed, and the sound was surprised and genuine. He's very wise for a golden retriever. Maybe you should listen to him. Maybe I should listen to both of you. We looked at each other across the small space between us on the bench, and I felt something shift in the air. Something that had been building since the moment Buster had bounded over to comfort me, since Ryan had shown up and treated my crisis like it mattered. Chloe, Ryan said, his voice rough with emotion. I need you to know something. What? Sitting here with you tonight, it's the first time in 3 years that I've felt like myself around another person. Not the version of myself I think I should be, not the careful, guarded version I've been since the divorce. Just me. My heart started beating faster. Is that good or bad? It's terrifying. Why? Because you're young and beautiful and full of possibility, and I'm a middle-aged park ranger with commitment issues and a tendency to overthink everything. You're also kind and thoughtful and brave enough to completely change your life when you realized it wasn't working. Chloe. Ryan, can I ask you something? Anything. When you imagine being happy, really happy, what does it look like? He was quiet for a moment, considering the question. It looks like Sunday mornings without any agenda. It looks like cooking breakfast for someone I love and talking about books and plans for the day. His voice grew softer. It looks like sharing the things I'm passionate about with someone who gets excited about them too. That doesn't sound like something that requires you to be perfect or have your entire life figured out. No, it doesn't. It just sounds like it requires you to be honest about what you want and brave enough to pursue it. Ryan reached over slowly, carefully, and took my hand in his. His skin was warm and slightly rough, and when his thumb brushed across my knuckles, I felt something electric shoot up my arm. What are you saying, Chloe? I'm saying that maybe we both ended up on this bench tonight for a reason. Maybe you needed to meet someone who thinks your authenticity is attractive instead of inconvenient. And maybe I needed to meet someone who reminds me that it's okay to want something different from what I thought I was supposed to want. And what is it that you want? I looked at him, at this man who had appeared out of the darkness with his therapy dog and his gentle questions and his own beautiful brokenness, and I felt more certain than I had about anything in years. I want to write again. I want to travel and take risks and stop being afraid of not having a 5-year plan. I squeezed his hand. And I want to get to know you better. I want to hear more about native plants and hiking trails and what it's like to have the courage to start over. Chloe, you're 25. You could have anyone. I don't want anyone. I want you. Ryan closed his eyes, and when he opened them again, they were bright with something that looked like hope mixed with disbelief. This is crazy. The best things usually are. People will talk about the age difference. Let them. I might be terrible at this. I haven't dated anyone since my divorce. Neither have I. Well, not seriously anyway. Ryan lifted our joined hands and pressed a soft kiss to my knuckles. What happens now? He asked. Now you give me your number, and tomorrow I cook you breakfast while we talk about books and make plans for the day. Just like that. Just like that. He smiled, and it was the brightest, most genuine smile I'd seen all night. Okay, Chloe. Let's see what happens when two lost people try to find their way together. That was 14 months ago. Ryan helped me start freelance writing, and I helped him remember that taking risks in love is just as important as taking risks in career. We spend our weekends hiking the trails he maintains, and he tells me about the ecosystem while I take notes for the nature articles I've started publishing. Last month, I got my first piece accepted by a major magazine, a story about finding love in unexpected places, about the courage it takes to change direction, about the way some of our biggest mistakes can lead us to exactly where we need to be. Before I go, thank you. These stories are real. They're mine. And I share one every day. If you want to hear more, subscribe. We still go to that bench sometimes, Ryan and I and Buster. Not to remember what was lost, but to celebrate what was found. And every time we sit there together, I'm grateful for that night when I was crying in the park and a golden retriever decided I needed rescuing. Sometimes the best things in life come to you when you're not looking for them at all.